Okay, so in the last video we spoke about the thalamus, and we spoke about all the different ways, like the different tracks that could go around it, such as like a pod circuit. We talked about the connections, we talked about the different nucleus and stuff in them, and in this video we're going to talk about the hypothalamus. So we have to remember the diencephalon, right? Diencephalon was this bundle that's composed of 4 different things. I'll go over it again in a little bit. Just we have to remember one of the things that was involved in it was the hypothalamus. So we went thalamus, now hypothalamus. Alright, well, let's talk about it. Okay, so the hypothalamus, what is it? Alright, we said it's part of the diencephalon. Okay, good. What is the diencephalon made of? I said it in the last video, but we'll say it again real quick. It's composed of the thalamus, the hypothalamus, the epithalamus, particularly the pineal gland that's involved in that epithalamus, and also the subthalamus. Now, I said, how do we know the location of all these different thalamuses in the diencephalon? We take the thalamus, right, our peace sign structure, and that's how we determine where everything else is located. Cool. So, here we go, another bad picture of the brain. This is my little spinal cord. So a little spinal cord, baby one. This is our medulla, our pons, and then that little thing right there, it's gonna be our baby midbrain. Okay, and what is these structures composed? Like, what are all these things? This is our brainstem. Cool. Now, here we are. This is not the full brain. This is not where the temporal lobe, the occipital lobe, parietal lobe, right? That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about that little structure, right? If we take the brain like this, break it in half. Now, this is half of the brain. We're looking inside, and it's the innermost region of the brain, right? And there's 2 parts. There's a left and a right. We're just going to talk about one of them for the video. But here we go. So, here's our thalamus, right? Here's our peace sign. Now, first one. We already covered this one in the video, so check. The next one we're going to do is the hypothalamus. I'm going to show his location last, just because it makes more sense to me to do it like that. The next one is the epithalamus, right? And what is his? I just said he's basically the pineal gland. So the pineal gland, right, is literally located. So if this is posterior, right, this is our occipital lobe. Occipital. Not in this region, obviously. Back here, I don't have space. And then in this region in the front, we're going to have the frontal lobe. And up here, I'll just write parietal, right? And we know temporal is right here, lateral. Okay, so if this is the thalamus, right, posterior to the thalamus, we have the epithalamus. And this is the pineal gland. So thalamus, check. Epithalamus. Now pineal gland, check. Below the thalamus, so like basically right underneath and a little posterior too, but basically right below, we're going to have the subthalamus. It would probably continue out to like this region just to make it a little posterior. But this is going to be the subthalamus. Now, the last one we're going to talk about, which this whole entire video is going to be on, is the hypothalamus. Okay, why is he so important? Because he has a lot of different functions, and I'm going to talk about the functions after. Just know he has functions for the limbic system, our endocrine system, and our nervous system. Those are his main functions. But each of those functions have little different like derivatives. Okay, so quick anatomy overview one more time. This is the brainstem, right? Occipital lobe. Remember in the last video, above the thalamus was the corpus callosum. Above the corpus callosum was what? Another region like this. It was called the cingulate gyrus. If you keep proceeding downward now, this is where it gets a little interesting. Continuing from the corpus callosum, we have this thing called the anterior commissure. So it's just a little bulge, right? This little bulb that comes out. This is going to be called the anterior commissure. And then if you proceed down even further from this anterior commissure, so even more anterior and also more inferior, we're going to have the lamina terminalis. I'll get to him. And now, real quick, we know this is the pituitary gland. We've said this a lot. And then this is the mammillary body. Remember, the mammillary body was used in what system? In the thalamus for the anterior thalamic tract using the Papaz circuit for Papaz circuit, and this was used for episodic memory. We'll get to it though. We'll come back to it. I just wanted to throw that out there. Now, that's the whole entire anatomy that I really want to talk about just for the hypothalamus. I know I went a little extra into detail, but I think it was important and necessary. Okay, so now you see that I have like 2 different regions, right? It's broken down into like 3 different regions particularly. Okay, and I just talked about the anatomy. Now, what I'm going to really talk about is this, not the function, but like all the nucleuses that are involved in the hypothalamus. So here's the hypothalamus, right? The blue region. Say we zoom in on the hypothalamus, right? And all we're really focused on is this area from the brainstem, right? And into here. So if I circle this whole region, that's what we're zooming into. Just keep in mind the mammillary body. That's the biggest thing I want you to know. The mammillary body to like the most anterior part. So if this is it zoomed in, right? This is the whole hypothalamus in blue. This is the pituitary gland. This is the mammillary body that coincides, right? And all these structures that I have like circled, that looks crazy right now, is in this hypothalamus. So you see I have 1, 2, 3, and 4. Well, it would just be 1, 2, 3, 4. Obviously it proceeds to the top, like we're to the superficial part, but you guys get what I'm saying. Now, why is it broken up into 4 different regions? Well, it's broken up into 4 different zones. Particularly, each zone kind of works together for their specific function. Now, what do I mean by this? I said the hypothalamus has different functions. What are the functions? So it has control of the limbic system, which we talked about in the last video. It's got to do with emotion, aggression, fear, feeding, sexual behavior, right? It's got the endocrine system, which is going to have a lot of stuff. It's going to be different hormones, different like drugs and stuff that our body processes and uses. And then the autonomic nervous system. What is the autonomic nervous system? It's either the parasympathetic or autonomic nervous system. We'll get there. Parasympathetic, rest and digest. Autonomic, flight or flight. Fight or flight. Okay. Now, you see these regions, right? 4 different zones for these 3 different functions. Some of them are going to overlap. I said that. Okay. So we're going to go from anterior to posterior. So all the way up here would be the frontal lobe. You guys know that. And in the back here would be occipital. All the way, right? If that's how we're looking at it. Fine. So anterior to posterior, zone 1 is going to be known as our pre-optic zone. Now, in the pre-optic zone, right, we have 1 nucleus. What's the nucleus? The medial pre-optic nucleus. Not bad. Makes sense. Pre-optic zone, pre-optic nucleus. Cool. The second zone, however, he's kind of annoying. Second zone is going to be known as our supraoptic zone. Okay. So pre is before supra. So our supra one comes next. We have a couple of structures in him. We're going to have our anterior hypothalamic nucleus, our paraventricular nucleus, our supraoptic nucleus, and our suprachiasmatic nucleus. Chiasmatic. Now, you're like, whoa, what are all these things going to do? You know, as I proceed in the video, I'm going to explain every single one slowly. So, from ascending to descending order, anterior hypothalamic nucleus, paraventricular nucleus, supraoptic nucleus, and suprachiasmatic nucleus. Right? I just abbreviated them just to make it look so I could fit. I couldn't write all the names in. Now, zone 3 is going to be known as the tuberal zone. What's in him? Really not too bad. We're going to have the dorsal medial nucleus, the ventral medial nucleus. Whoa. Why would this be ventral and this would be dorsal? Well, this is ventral because it's more anterior. How is it more anterior? Because I'm working this way, and this is the frontal lobe, and this is the occipital. So ventral is anterior, and dorsal is what? Dorsal is posterior. So it's going to be more posterior towards the occipital lobe, kind of behind it, or behind it. And what's below these guys? It's going to be known as the Argument Nucleus. Cool. Now, the last one, number 4. It's going to be known as the Mammillary Zone. Why do you think it's the Mammillary Zone? Well, it's right under our Mammillary Bodies. Remember, this is the Mammillary Bodies we spoke about right up here? Or Mammillary Body, I apologize. Not body, is body. Okay. Now, he has 2 regions in him too. He has the posterior hypothalamic nucleus. So, that's right here. And then he's got the mammillary nucleus. Makes sense. Mammillary nucleus is going to be right near the mammillary body. Cool. Now, you're like, Joe, how does 11, there's 11 if you count them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. There's 10, not 11. I don't know why I said 11. Okay, there's 10 different structures, right? You're like, how do these 10 structures fit into these 3 different functions? Okay, so there's also 4 different groups. How do these 4 groups fit into these 3 functions? I'm going to talk about it. What we're going to talk about is 11 different functions, however. That's why I said number 11. So there's going to be 11 different functions, right? Each of these nucleuses, or nuclei, are going to have their own specific function, except for one of them. The Argument Nucleus, he's going to have 2 different functions, so he's going to be used twice. So when we discuss it, we're going to talk about 11 different things. Each of them have their own, except the Argument Nucleus. I'm going to write him times 2. All right, so it's really not too bad. One last thing I want to cover. Why did I write this in right here? So, the region, right? The pituitary gland, he sinks below. I don't know, just like sits there. And he goes a little below, right? He hangs. And he's going to have this region around him, I drew it in brown, this circle. It's going to be known as the tuber serenium. Now, as this function closes, right, as it makes that V shape, it's going to be narrowing, of course, and it's going to be known as the infundibulum. So this region right here where the V forms is called the infundibulum. Cool. Last thing. What is this right here? They're like, whoa, Joe, what the world? Okay, so remember I said, the brain, right? We take it, we break it in half. Now, pretend I'm looking at the brain, right? I take this structure and I go like this. I'm looking at the brain. I'm going to have a lateral hypothalamic side on both sides, right? I'm going to have a medial hypothalamic in the middle, and then right down Broadway, right down the middle, it's going to be this blue region. The blue region is going to be our third ventricle. Okay, now, what did we say? This is the third ventricle. What else do we have? This purple region, this is going to be our medial nucleus, or medial hypothalamic nucleuses. Nuclei. Okay, can't pronounce today. Now, why? Because this whole entire region, right? Every structure we just spoke about is going to be this medial part. This medial part on both sides, because we have 2 sides, right? We have left side of our brain, right side. They're going to be the medial nuclei. So anterior to posterior again, zone 1, 2, 3, and 4. Zone 1 being pre-optic, zone 2 being supraoptic, zone 3 being tuberal, zone 4 being mammillary. Left side of my head, right side of my head. In the middle, third ventricle. Lateral to both of these are going to be our lateral hypothalamic nucleus. So, lateral hypothalamic nucleus, 4 different zones that we just spoke about, third ventricle. Cool. That's everything we need to know about the anatomy and the different zones. Now I'm going to go through each zone one by one. Well, not each zone. I'm going to go through each function one by one. I'm going to start off with the limbic system, then I'm going to do endocrine, then I'm going to do the autonomic nervous system. One by one, it's not going to be too bad, we got this. Okay, so to start, we said the hypothalamus has 3 different functions. Limbic system, endocrine system, and autonomic nervous system. First one we're going to do, limbic system, right? What is the limbic system really used for? It's for memory and learning, emotions, feeding, and sexual behaviors. We spoke about this. Now, what region of the what zones of the hypothalamus are we going to use for this? Okay, so I'm going to take this little thing right here, and we're going to talk about it. So we're in the limbic system, right? We have all the different zones. Zone 1, Zone 2, Zone 3, Zone 4, right? The Pre-Optic Zone, the Supraoptic Zone, the Vestibular Zone, and the Mammillary Zone. Or Mammillary Zone, sorry. Now, these are the 5 different structures. So we're going to use mammillary bodies. So one is going to be the mammillary bodies. Mammillary bodies. Number 2 is going to be the Argument Nucleus. And number 3 is the Ventral Medial Nucleus. So Argument Nucleus, Ventral Medial Nucleus. I'm just going to write N to abbreviate it. Lateral hypothalamic and dorsal medial. So lateral, let's see. Lateral and dorsal medial. Now, where are these? Okay, so the mammillary bodies, we know they're going to be right here. right? So it's going to be the mammillary nucleus, not bodies. We know that. So I'll just write an N. So we're going to have this guy. I'm going to fill him in so we know we finished him. So this is going to be in the mammillary zone. What else are we going to have? We're going to have the Argument Nucleus, so we know he's right in here. I'm only going to fill him in halfway because we said we have to use him twice. Okay. We have the Ventral Medial Nucleus. Where is this guy located at? Oh, this is in this zone too, the tuberal zone. So I'm going to fill him in. Lateral Hypothalamic Zone. Where is this guy located? Okay. He was located where we had lateral. Then we had our 4 zones, 1, 2, 3, 4. We have the third ventricle. 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 zones, and lateral. I don't know why I drew that as a circle. I apologize. 1, 2, 3, 4, right? So the lateral one is going to be on both sides, right? It's going to be lateral to all the medial zones. So we're going to do the lateral one. I'll fill him in. What else do we have? We have the dorsal medial nucleus. Where is he? Okay, he's in the tuberal zone too, so I'm going to fill this guy in. Okay, so for the first region, the limbic system, right, we're taking one nucleus. The medial, the mammillary nucleus in the mammillary zone, all of the nucleuses in the tuberal zone, and then this lateral nucleus. Fine, not bad. Now, what are we going to have here? So the limbic system, right? These are the nuclei that we're using. Remember this structure right here? I know it looks like all over the place, but this was in the last video of the thalamus. And we had Papa's circuit. So, what does this region do? Remember we said the Papa's circuit. It takes information from the hippocampus, sends it to the where? Mammillary gland, right? Or the mammillary body. From this region, it goes to the Anterior Thalamic Nucleus. Cool. From the Anterior Thalamic Nucleus, he travels into the cingulate gyrus. From the cingulate gyrus, he travels down into the entorhinal cortex, back up into the hippocampus. Okay, not too bad. So, why did I mention all of this stuff? Because what nucleus was used? Alright, we just used the mammillary bodies, right? So we used the mammillary nucleus. Okay, it's not too bad. Now, that's the first part of the limbic system that I want to talk about the hypothalamus. Now, if we have damage to this region, right, to the mammillary bodies, we're going to have a disease. We're going to have Wernicke's encephalopathy, or encephaly, I apologize. Or we could have Korsakoff syndrome, which is, like vitamin B1 deficiency from being an alcoholic potentially. We're damaging our episodic memory. So we can't control our thoughts to be like fluid. So we could think of ourselves say we go to the grocery store and back, right? So instead of saying I went to the grocery store and back, you forget some aspects when you're driving. Okay, I forgot I passed the red car, and you start filling things in. And you're starting to make up your own stories in your head on your trip to the grocery store and back. So you're having trouble having episodic memory. Okay. Another structure that I want to mention real quick in this limbic system is the amygdala. What is the amygdala used for? Well, he's used for fear, aggression, and olfaction, right? For smells. Okay. Now, the stria terminalis, right? This is going to be a tract. I'm going to show it right here. The stria terminalis, he's going to connect the amygdala to the hypothalamus. So, this limbic tract, it also has another tract known as the ventral amygdala fugal pathway. I don't know if you guys can see that too well, but just know that the amygdala is connected to the hypothalamus via the stria terminalis. Now, what is this used for? Okay, it's used for the limbic system for fear, aggression, and behaviors. Now, if you have damage to this region, right? If you have damage to the amygdala, you're gonna be crazy. You're gonna be a mean person, a cruel person. It's not too good. You're gonna be very cruel. Now, what I want to cover next is the next 4 nucleuses, or the nuclei. I apologize. Now, the main one right here, ARC. This is the Argument Nucleus. what is he going to do? So basically all this guy does is he receives information via neuropeptides. What type of neuropeptides? I'll get to it. He receives information from neuropeptides, right? And he stimulates two other nuclei. Which ones? He stimulates the ventral medial nucleus and the lateral hypothalamic nucleus. Okay, so which ones are those? The ventral medial nucleus was where? Right here. And then the lateral hypothalamic nucleus was this guy. Okay, so he targets those guys. How is he going to target them? Okay, so for the ventral medial nucleus, right? Neuropeptides are going to come into the arcuate fibers, right, or arcuate nucleus. The neuropeptides particularly are alpha melanocytes, and then, alpha melanocyte stimulating hormone, and then cocaine and amphetamine regulating transcripts. These two neuropeptides are going to send signals into the ventral medial nucleus. What is this going to do? The ventral medial nucleus is then going to send fibers down to the or he's going to release a hormone known as corticotropin releasing hormone. This hormone is then going to tell us that we're full. So it's our satiety center. So for this ventral medial nucleus, know this is our satiety center. How does this happen? The neuropeptides stimulate this region, releases corticotropin releasing hormone, makes us full. Okay, now, if we have damage to this region, what's going to happen? We can't stop eating. We're going to have a disorder known as hyperphagia. We're just never full. Okay, now, new neuropeptide, same thing. In the arcuate fibers, neuropeptide gamma or neuropeptide agouti regulating peptide stimulates this thing, targets the lateral hypothalamic nucleus. This guy, right? He's going to release something called orexins. Orexins are then going to induce hunger. It's going to make us hungry. Cool. Now, you see all these crazy things here, right? One quick thing. How does the damage, right? If this is damage, what's going to happen? Well, in children, we're not going to be able to thrive because we can't have enough calories in our body. In adults, we're going to get anorexia nervosa, right? We just don't want to eat. We're never hungry. Okay. Now, I know this looks crazy. However, we'll get through it real quick. There's different ways that these centers are stimulated because, okay, are you going to have alpha melanocyte stimulating hormone or cocaine just to make you full? No. Are you going to literally have neuropeptide gamma or agouti regulatory peptide just to make you hungry? No. So our body has natural ways of doing it. What are they? Okay, to make us hungry, right? The main one, or the easiest one to know, is fasting. If you fast, you release ghrelin. If you release ghrelin, you're hungry. Cool. So ghrelin is going to stimulate this guy, he's going to stimulate the lateral hypothalamic nucleus, and he's going to inhibit the ventral medial nucleus. Okay, he inhibits the one that makes you full, stimulates the one that makes you hungry. Very, very easy. Now, this gets a little difficult now, not too bad. We have three different regions here, right? Okay, what is this guy? We have fat, so our adipose tissue, right? We have the pancreas, and then we have the small intestine, if you can see. So first, fat, right? If you're fat, not if you're fat, but fat releases a hormone called leptin. Now, if you release leptin, it makes you feel full. The pancreas, right? It releases a lot of glucose. If you have a lot of glucose, it releases insulin. If you get a lot of insulin, it's going to do something else. Lastly, the small intestine, when it stretches, right? The vagus nerve, cranial nerve 10, is located on the small intestine. When it picks up the stretch, it's going to do something as well. So now, leptin from fat, insulin from the pancreas, and stretch reflex from cranial nerve 10, vagus nerve, all get sent up to the hypothalamus. When they're sent up to the hypothalamus, right, they're then going to stimulate the ventral medial nucleus, so this red guy. When they stimulate this red guy, he's going to do what? He's going to release corticotropin releasing hormone, and he's going to say, ho ho, buddy, we're full. Don't eat no more, we're full. The fat's like, we're good. Glucose is like, I'm good. The stomach's like, bro, I'm already stretched. Don't keep stretching me. Chilling. So he stimulates this guy, and who's going to inhibit the lateral hypothalamic nucleus? All right, the same thing. These three areas stimulate ventral medial nucleus and inhibit lateral hypothalamic nucleus. Okay. We said ghrelin inhibits the ventral medial nucleus and stimulates lateral hypothalamic nucleus. That's it. All you need to know. Not too bad. That's everything you know for the limbic system. So you know the 5 different zones. Wait, I am so sorry I missed one. The main DMV, right? What is this guy? The dorsal medial nucleus is used for what? He's used for behaviors. So what type of behaviors? If you damage the dorsal medial the dorsal medial nucleus, if you damage him, you're going to also become a cruel person. You're going to be very rude, right? Etc. He's also located in this area, but the main things I wanted you guys to know about this area was the ventral medial nucleus and lateral hypothalamic nucleus controlling our hunger and satiety. Okay, that's all we need to know about the limbic system. I'm going to move on now to the endocrine system in 1 second. Here's the hypothalamic connections, right? We just spoke about them. Limbic system. For the amygdala, we have the striae, right? The striae terminalis, or the ventral amygdala fugal pathway connecting to the hypothalamus. Now, we also have the hippocampus going around the fornix connecting to the hypothalamus. Hippocampus, fornix, mammillary thalamic bodies, hypothalamus. We have the prefrontal cortex and the reticular formation, right? These guys, I'm going to talk about them a little later in the videos, but he's also going to connect to the hypothalamus via the medial or the median forebrain bundle, but I'll get there. Now, we're going to move on to the endocrine system. Okay, so now for the endocrine system, really not too bad. We need to focus on 4 main zones, or, yeah, we can say zones. Hypothalamic zones, right? Okay, we already covered 5 of them. Well, yeah, we covered 5 of them. We covered the mammillary, the arcuate, the ventral medial, the lateral, and the dorsal medial. Now, the ones in this region for the endocrine system, we're going to write the arcuate nucleus. Oh, well, I thought we already did that. Well, that's why I only circled half, so I'm going to fill in the second half now. So arcuate nucleus, you can finish him. What does that mean? Our whole entire tuberal zone. Finished. Done. Number 2 is going to be the supraoptic nucleus. So I'll write down here, arcuate, and then supra. This is hard to write like this. Supraoptic. Okay, so where's the supraoptic nucleus? He's right here. And what zone is this? This is the supraoptic zone. Now, what else are we going to do? We're going to do the paraventricular. So we're going to write paraventricular. Okay, where's the paraventricular? Same thing. Supraoptic zone. Gonna cross him out. What else do we got? Well, over here, if you see, I have the medial pre-optic nucleus. Alright, we'll talk about what that means, but where is he gonna be? Well, he's gonna be our first one. And honestly, this all kind of correlates if you look at this. What is this picture right here? This is a blown up version of our pituitary gland, and this is a blown up version of the hypothalamus. And this brown one, right, is going to be our medial pre-optic nucleus. Medial pre-optic nucleus is the most anterior one. So it kind of like corresponds, most anterior to most anterior. And then, what's 2 and 3 that we just wrote in? Supraoptic and paraventricular. Okay, and then what's the most posterior one to that? The arcuate. Okay, so what? Arcuate nucleus would be right here, right? In this zone, well, here he is. Then we have the supraoptic, right over here, and the paraventricular, right over here. They're kind of in the same zones. If we break it into zone 4, no, this would be zone 3, I apologize. This would be zone 2, and this guy was at zone 1. Okay, I know this board is really dumb, but for me it helps me understand where all the zones come from and match them to the different nuclei. Okay, so we'll keep going. Now, the first one I want to talk about is the arcuate nucleus, right? I have him in orange. What is he going to do? Basically, all this guy does, not all, but what this guy does is he sends a fiber down into our portal circulation. Okay, why would he do this? Okay, so the portal circulation is going to be known as the hypothalamic hypophyseal portal system, and this guy does a crap ton of stuff. Okay, what is this guy going to do? He's going to have 4 This circulation from the argument nucleus is going to have 4 main functions, and we're going to talk about them right now. Why didn't I write 5? Well, because the 5th one's going to come from somewhere else, which we'll get to. But first, it's all going to go from the portal circulation to the anterior pituitary. Okay, it's all going to go to the anterior pituitary. What's that? This pituitary region, right? This is the anterior pituitary, and this is the posterior pituitary. Pituitary what? Pituitary gland. So the anterior side and the posterior side. Okay, so first we're going to release one pituitary. It's going to release GnRH and GnIH. What is that? GnRH is gonadotropin releasing hormone. It also can release gonadotropin inhibitory hormone. Fine. What is this guy going to do? All he's going to do is stimulate this green area, which I have as somatotropic cells. So it's going to stimulate somatotropic cells, which are then going to release growth hormone. And what is growth hormone used for? It helps our whole body grow. Like, every single cell in our body is going to basically grow from growth hormone. Cool. The next thing it could do goes from portal circulation, or Argument Nucleus, portal circulation via hypothalamic hypophyseal portal system, anterior to pituitary, to corticotropin releasing hormone, or corticotropin inhibiting hormone. Fine. What is he going to target? He's going to target, same thing, the corticotropin cells, which are then going to target the ACTH. Okay, what are these going to target? Well, what are they going to do? Okay, they're going to release cortisol. Okay, so now we release cortisol from the anterior pituitary. Okay, what is this ACTH? Anterior corticotropin hormone. Sorry. Now, they release cortisol. The next thing we're going to do. Argument Nucleus, hypothalamic hypophyseal portal system, portal circulation, to prolactin inhibiting hormone. What is prolactin inhibiting hormone? All it is dopamine. I don't know why they changed the name, but all it is dopamine. Now, dopamine is going to target this thing in orange. It's called the lactotropes. Okay. Think of lactotropes, you think of lactose. Lactose, you think of milk. Fine. These lactotropes are then going to target prolactin. What is prolactin going to do? Well, prolactin is going to target this little boob structure right here. The mammillary glands. Sorry, I spelled it wrong. The mammillary glands. And what are these going to do? They're going to produce milk. Where? Mainly the female breasts. Okay, so one more thing from our Argument Nucleus. Argument Nucleus, hypothalamic hypophyseal portal system, portal circulation. Anterior pituitary goes to TRH or TRIH. TRH is thyroid releasing hormone. TRIH is thyroid releasing inhibitory hormone. Okay. What are these guys going to target? They're going to target the structure in red. They're called thyrotropes. What are thyrotropes? Okay. Thyrotropes release TSH, thyroid stimulating hormone. Why? Okay, so it goes thyroid releasing hormone to thyroid stimulating hormone to the thyroid. The thyroid then releases T3 and T4. These are the thyroid hormones. I'm not going into the different thyroid hormones in this video, but I will eventually. Now, I said there's 1, 2, 3, 4 different things. However, it looks like there's 5, right? Well, the 5th one, the 5th function is coming from, boom, the medial pre-optic nucleus. Oh, so from our pre-optic zone, our most anterior one. Remember where he was? This guy. Cool. Now, he's going to send stuff down, right, into the portal circulation via the hypothalamic hypophyseal portal system again. That's going to go into the anterior pituitary. This is going to release GnRH. Wait a second. Didn't we just release GnRH here? Yep, I'm going to release it again over here. What is this? Gonadotropin releasing hormone. He's going to then target gonadotropes. What are gonadotropes? Gonadotropes are basically where the sex hormones lie. Which ones? Okay. They're going to target, gonadotropes are going to target FSH and LH. Okay, so FSH for females are going to release estrogen. And for males, they're going to release sperm. Okay, so follicle stimulating hormone in females releases estrogen. Follicle stimulating hormone in males release sperm. Luteinizing hormone, LH, in females release progesterone. LH and luteinizing hormone in males are going to release testosterone. Cool. Now, these are known as sexually dimorphic nuclei, Why? Because they release male or female sex hormones. They're just a little different for for each gender. Cool. So now we know the Argument Nucleus travels into the portal circulation, anterior pituitary, can stimulate somatotrophic cells, corticotropin, lactotropes, thyrotropes, right? And then the medial pre-optic nucleus can stimulate what? Gonadotropes. Done deal. Two more guys I want to talk about. Which ones? The supraoptic nucleus and the paraventricular nucleus. Okay. We'll do supraoptic nucleus first, right? I have him in blue. What's he going to do? He's going to send things down to the posterior pituitary. Okay, so we know the pituitary gland, right? We have an anterior and posterior. So we're going to the posterior. Cool. How is he going to release stuff? Or why? Okay, so he's going to respond to two different things. He's going to respond to osmolality. What is osmolality? Our water balance. What does this mean? Okay, so if I just drink tons and tons of water, I'm going to be very, what? Hypoosmolaltic. Now, if I have a high solute concentration, right? So if I'm like not drinking water and all I'm doing is eating freaking sunflower seeds or salt all day, I'm going to be very hypertonic. I'm not hypotonic. I'm going to be hypertonic. What is this going to do? It's going to make our cells like very, what? They're going to shrink. Another response, it's going to respond to the renin-angiotensin-aldosterone system, particularly angiotensin 2. Both of these things, either the osmolality or angiotensin 2, they're going to be responsible for blood pressure. How? Okay? The supraoptic nucleus is going to receive innervation from them, send it down through the, what? Hypothalamic hypophyseal tract. Cool. This tract is then going to release ADH. Okay, what is ADH? Basically vasopressin, also known as antidiuretic hormone. Cool. He could do two things. He could stimulate blood vessels or he could stimulate the kidneys. If he stimulates the blood vessels, he's going to vasoconstrict them. Okay. And if he stimulates the kidneys, he's going to what? Reabsorb water. Why? Okay. So first, if we stimulate the kidneys, right? We have a lot of salt in our body. Our cells have a lot of salt, our blood vessels, right? We're shrinking. If we reabsorb the water, we're going to help what? We're going to help fill up the vessel with more fluid. So we're going to increase the volume. If we increase our water volume, our blood pressure is going to go up. So we're going to counteract the solute concentration. Now, if we stimulate this guy, the blood vessels, we're going to vasoconstrict our blood vessels. If we vasoconstrict the blood vessels, what happens? So instead of having pressure, right? So pressure just flowing through in a big tube like this, right? If we make it smaller, just like a hose, if you like close a hose, the water's going to fly out faster. We're going to increase the blood pressure. Not that bad. So now we know supraoptic nucleus is responsible for two things. Increasing the blood pressure. How? Constricting the blood vessels. Reabsorbing fluid through the kidneys. Last one. Number 3. Paraventricular nucleus. Not that. What does he do? He receives innervation from either two different ways. We could get sucking on the mother's nipple, like during lactation or breastfeeding, or uterine stretching in the womb. This could help activate the signal. Other different ways are going to be, I'll talk about the other different ways, but mainly from sucking on the mother's breast during breastfeeding and uterine stretches in the womb. What's going to happen? This paraventricular nucleus is going to release oxytocin. What's oxytocin going to do? Okay, so in the uterus, it's going to what? It's going to inhibit uterine contractions. So it's going to stop the uterine contractions. If it's in the muscle or the muscle in the milk glands, it's going to release milk. So if it's the uterine stretch, we're going to inhibit the contractions. If it's sucking on the mother's nipple and breastfeeding, it's going to release milk via the milk glands. Cool. Now, the last one I want to talk about. The suprachiasmatic nucleus. I did not mention him before. Where is he going to be? So we really have 5 different structures, not 4. I apologize. I have to write in the last one. I have to write in what? the medial pre-optic. I'm just going to write medial right there, and I'm just going to write 5. I'm going to write in SCN. I'm not writing out the whole thing. Okay, what is SCN? It's the suprachiasmatic nucleus. Where is he? Same region, same exact region. What is he going to do? So this guy, basically all he is our internal clock. How? Or a biological clock, I should say. How does this happen? Okay, so he's located right here in this supraoptic zone. And he's going to do one thing. So light is going to come through our cornea, hit our retina, travel through the optic nerve, then travel through the retino-hypothalamic tract, right? It's going to then target our internal clock, which is then going to target our pineal gland. Pineal gland is then going to do what? So in response to darkness, if there's no light and it's just dark, the pineal gland is going to release melatonin. When it releases melatonin, it's going to activate our sleep-wake cycles, and it's going to be controlled of our circadian rhythm. If there's light, it stops releasing melatonin, so we don't have to sleep. We stay awake. No melatonin, awake. Melatonin, sleep. How is this controlled? Light to the eye targets the suprachiasmatic nucleus, targets the pineal glands. If there's light, turns off melatonin. If there's no light, turns on melatonin. Cool. If we have damage to this internal clock, I don't know, I drew this nucleus as a clock. I stole it from Ninja Nerd, or I like his videos. But if you damage this clock, you're going to get insomnia. Cool. That's basically everything we need to know about the endocrine system. Here's our hypothalamic connections. What are they? For the supraoptic nucleus, right? We're connected to where? The hypothalamus. Or for the paraventricular nucleus, we're connected to the hypothalamus with what? The hypothalamus hypophyseal tract. We said that right here. The hypothalamic hypophyseal tract is from the supraoptic nucleus and the paraventricular nucleus. The Argument Nucleus connects to the what? The hypothalamic hypophyseal portal system. Argument Nucleus, hypothalamic hypophyseal portal system for portal circulation. Cool. Now, the last structure we have to talk about is the autonomic nervous system. Now, the last one we got to cover is the autonomic nervous system. Luckily for us, we already know mostly everything about it, so it's not too bad. So, what are the two nuclei that we didn't cover yet? The anterior hypothalamic nucleus. So we're going to write anterior I'm just writing it like that. And then what's the last one? The posterior hypothalamic. Okay, where are these guys located? Well, the anterior is obviously going to be more anterior than the posterior. He's going to be in the supraoptic zone. And then the posterior one is going to be where? The mammillary zone. Very far posterior. So now, boom, we finished all of our nuclei in the hypothalamus. Cool. Get rid of this guy. Now, the autonomic nervous system. Cool. We said parasympathetic or sympathetic. We'll do parasympathetic first because it's anterior. So the anterior hypothalamic nucleus is responsible for primarily parasympathetic nervous system supply. Cool. So here he is, anterior, HN, anterior hypothalamic nucleus. He sends his fibers around the posterior hypothalamic nucleus. So it just goes around it, right? Via the dorsal longitudinal fasciculus, that's what it's called. He travels down, right? I see you have him in blue. He targets a lot of different things. First thing he's going to target is going to be our reticular formation. We talked to him about the reticular formation a lot. He's used for alerting arousal, right, to our cerebral cortex. He alerts or arouses our body and tells our cerebral cortex. Not bad. Now, he also supplies cranial nerve 3, cranial nerve 7, cranial nerve 9, cranial nerve 10. Okay, what are these cranial nerves? So first, cranial nerve 3 is the oculomotor nerve. We know this. He's mainly used for this pupillary constriction or Edinger-Westphal nucleus, right? So the first parasympathetic thing is for cranial nerve 3, oculomotor nerve. Cool. Then he could also target the superior salvatory nucleus or the inferior salvatory nucleus. You know these guys are used for salivation. The superior salivatory nucleus comes from what? Cranial nerve 7, the facial one, the facial nerve. The inferior salivatory nucleus comes from cranial nerve 9, glossopharyngeal nerve. Cool. Proceed down. Cranial nerve 10, vagus nerve. In particular, the dorsal nucleus of vagus. Okay, that's going to be for also parasympathetic supply. Another thing, he stimulates the nucleus of tractus solitarius. And we know what this guy is used for. The nucleus of tractus solitarius is used for taste. Okay, so we do taste. But does he come directly from the anterior hypothalamic nucleus tract? No. What he does, he sends his fibers up to the anterior hypothalamic nucleus to tell it taste. All the other ones do come from the anterior hypothalamic nucleus. Fine. Not bad though, not bad. If you proceed down, the last thing it's going to target is the sacral portion of our spinal cord. In particular, S2 to S4 preganglionic cell bodies, and this is the parasympathetic neurons, right, of the sacral area. So that's about it. That's all the parasympathetic supply that we should know from the anterior hypothalamic nucleus. Now, what about the posterior hypothalamic nucleus? He's for sympathetic nerve supply. He comes straight down and he just targets this area right here, known as the preganglionic sympathetic neurons for the sympathetic nervous system. We know where he is in the spinal cord. He's from T1 to L2. We've spoken about him a lot. Now, one more thing I want to mention about the autonomic nervous system, or not the autonomic nervous system, but the anterior hypothalamic nucleus and posterior hypothalamic nucleus, is their thermoregulation effects. Okay, so we're going to start off with the anterior hypothalamic nucleus because we've been speaking about him a lot. All he does is he targets the parasympathetic nervous system to decrease body temperature. How is he going to do that? So the first thing he's going to do, he's going to vasodilate our blood vessels in our cutaneous region of our body, known as our skin. When you vasodilate these blood vessels, what's going to happen? So there's going to be more blood flow to the skin. Why is this important? Because if there's more blood flow to the skin, heat, our blood is warm, will radiate off of our body. If it radiates off our body, it's going to cool us down. Why is this important for parasympathetic? We don't really need that much blood in all of our muscles or all of our like running muscles or skeletal muscles, right? So we could cool our body down. Sympathetic, you want all of your blood in your quads or in your arms, right? Because what? It's flight or fight. You're running from a bear. You want all of your blood in these main skeletal muscles so you could like run faster, jump higher, etc. That went down the rabbit hole, but sorry. Now, another way you could decrease your body temperature is to stimulate your sweat glands. How can you stimulate your sweat glands? Okay, so you got little muscles here, right? It's going to release water. This water is known as sweat. Sweat is going to evaporate off of our skin. Okay, so that's another way we're going to decrease our body temperature. Okay, now, last thing. How are we going to increase our body temperature? So we decreased it with the anterior hypothalamic nucleus via parasympathetic nervous system. We're going to increase it with the posterior hypothalamic nucleus via the sympathetic nervous system. That's how we're going to increase our body temperature. So the first thing we're going to do, we're going to vasoconstrict our skin or our cutaneous vessels, not vasodilate. If we vasoconstrict it, the blood goes to mainly our internal organs and skeletal muscles, so the blood is not radiating off of our skin. Cool. Now, the next thing we do is shivering. You know how if you're super cold, you shiver? Well, shivering does little micro muscle contractions, which help warm the body. Okay, so that's how you're going to increase your temperature, by vasoconstricting your blood vessels and shivering. How do we decrease it? Sweating and vasodilating those blood vessels. Now, what are the tracts? Okay. The posterior hypothalamic nucleus uses the hypothalamic spinal tract. And then the the anterior hypothalamic nucleus uses the dorsal longitudinal fasciculus. So we said it. Anterior uses dorsal longitudinal fasciculus. Posterior uses the hypothalamic spinal tract. And And that's how he's going to proceed down the body. I don't know how important that is, but just wanted to mention it. Okay, so that's basically everything that we need to know for the limbic system, and I don't know, not for the limbic system, for the hypothalamus, and I hope it helped. Well, the next video is going to be on the limbic system, so stay tuned.